So good morning again. Um, Question for you all. What's the difference between God and a doctor? Anything? You guys got to speak up. I can't hear.
You can sue a doctor for malpractice.
That might be better than the answer I'm going to offer. God doesn't think he's a doctor. Anyhow, my uncle, my dad's brother, was a medical doctor. He was 5 years younger than my dad, and he was like a second father to me, and sometimes maybe even like a first father to me because he was into rock and roll like I was, and younger music, and my dad was into the big band stuff and whatnot. So I could relate with my uncle really well, and my uncle wanted me to follow in his footsteps. So when I was in high school, uh, he would take me to what used to be Oakwood Hospital in Dearborn, is now Corewell Health Dearborn, and I'd go on patient rounds with him. He'd have to see how his patients were doing. And one time we gowned up and we went into the thoracic surgery operating room, and there before me is a human heart, chest wide open, just pop, 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 pop. And I was just absolutely fascinated by it. And I thought, these people in here, I don't know if they think they're God or not, but they do godly work, and I was really impressed by it. And I thought maybe I might do something like that one day. And but then I would reflect on my uncle's life, and he graduated from medical school, Wayne State, like in the early '50s. He set up a practice in Allen Park, and this was back in the day when there wasn't an urgent care center every half mile along the major streets. He had his office. He would call on the home. He would do house calls. And if they were really bad, he'd send them to Oakwood Hospital and visit them there. And invariably, when we were at family gatherings, invariably he'd be called out. And most of the time he'd be called out for obstetric works because he would deliver babies. This is when a general practitioner did a little bit of everything. And he was also head of the Department of General Surgery at Oakwood Hospital, where they do more minor type surgeries, although he did do a double inguinal hernia on me when I was 8 years old. Um, and he wanted me to follow in his footsteps. And I say he became like a second father to me because when he and my aunt would argue, which was mostly because he was just never home. I mean, he was always doing something else. And then he decided to run for city council, and he got elected to city council and was talking about running for mayor of Ellen Park. So he was never home, and my aunt, necessarily so, was upset. And so he would sleep in our front room. He'd sleep on the couch a whole lot of times. And I'd wake up in the morning to go to school, and my uncle in the house would be sleeping on the couch there. Um, so we became really close. And when it came time to apply to college, he knew that I didn't want to go to a big school. He'd gone to Wayne State undergrad and medical school. He knew I wanted a small college. I didn't want the big university. So he talked to other doctor friends of his, and they recommended two colleges: Albion College in Michigan and Hiram College in Ohio. And they said both of them have excellent pre medical programs. And Hiram was too far away, and my girlfriend was going to Eastern, so I went to Albion, and pleased that I went there and graduated from there. And my junior year, I just gotten back on campus. This was 1966. I was 19 years old, and I got a phone call from my dad. And my uncle was unconscious and critical, and they didn't think he was going to live. He was in Oakwood Hospital. He was 45 years old, and he had a cerebral aneurysm that had ruptured, And so I hopped a bus and came into Detroit. My dad picked me up downtown Detroit, and we went right to the hospital. And I remember talking to him and telling him, telling him what he meant to my life. And I said, you know, Uncle Niles, I said, if you can hear me, could you just squeeze my hand? And he gave it a little bit of a squeeze. So he was, you know, he heard what I was saying, even though he couldn't respond. And a couple of days later, he died. And I was absolutely devastated. And after he died, I knew that I wasn't going into human medicine. I was going to go into veterinary medicine. It was either or. I didn't know. He was pushing me for human medicine. I was leaning toward veterinary medicine. But after he died, I reflected on the nature of his life, and he was just so busy all the time. He was so dedicated to practicing medicine, and it's like he made. And this is the thing: he could have made time, but he didn't because he was really dedicated to his patients. And he didn't make time for family, even though he had two daughters and two sons. He didn't make time for family and a wife, my aunt. And I vowed I was never going to do that. And I saw myself doing that, following in his footsteps. And I went into veterinary medicine because I knew I was going to have more time for family. Family life for me was going to be extremely important. And I did. Well, you know, back then, the major type of medicine that was practiced is called allopathic medicine. And allopathic medicine means, you know, it's kind of like karate versus judo. You know, karate, you try and overwhelm your opponent. You come right at them, you know, with strikes and blows and kicks, and you overwhelm them with force. As opposed to judo, you use their energy and you invest very little in to overcome them. What's the difference? That's kind of like the difference between allopathic medicine and homeopathic medicine, which I eventually got tired of practicing allopathic medicine, where you give antibiotics or antiemetics or anti-diarrheals or anti-inflammatories. The patient presents with something and you give something that's directly opposed to that, and you overwhelm the system, not worrying about the rest of the balance of the system. Whereas with homeopathic theory, there's a subtle energy that's coursing throughout the body. And it's, you know, a little bit here more, and then a little bit less here, and then it shifts. And it's a dynamic, energetic force that's going within the body, coursing throughout. The physical is the least important. The physical manifests. Animals present with certain illnesses. We present with certain illnesses. But rather than saying that, you know, the illness is creating the problem, homeopathy looks at it. It's the immune system that is creating issues. You have diarrhea because your body is reacting against something, trying to rid it of something. You're vomiting for the same type of reason. You have a fever for the same type of reason. Your body is trying to fight off a bacteria or a virus or whatever. And so you use these subtle little energies, what they're called homeopathic remedies, these dilutions of substances in the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom, to subtly shift the energy dynamic and create health and healing. And I had gotten tired of using anti everything and just doing that day after day after day. There's got to be a more creative way that our systems work. And so I spent the next 35 years discovering those new creative ways with Chinese herbs and chiropractic and homeopathy primarily. So, and it brought me back to enjoying veterinary medicine again. Well, in homeopathy, as well as in, if you look at some of the Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic and whatnot, the emphasis is not as much on the physical as it is at the core. What's the core of our being? Homeopathy says the physical is the least important. It's kind of wrapped all around us. And then we have the emotional elements that are a little bit closer to the core. And the core is the mind and the spirit, mental aspects and spirituality. That's the most important of all. And you can even see those changes and shifts within animals, believe it, maybe not so much in the spiritual realm, but definitely in the mental realm. And of course, you guys know that one of the most important things if you're going to start developing some sort of exercise program is to develop your core. Really. And I used to, years ago after I had my back surgery, my orthopedic surgeon says, now Gary, you got to start developing that core. You got to start doing all those, whatever called splints or whatever you call them, and develop the core. And, I got tired of developing the core and I gave up and developed my belly instead. So, you develop the core. Well, in our practice, we try and develop the core too. The Latin word medeor, Medeor, it means to heal or to make whole. To heal or to make whole. And what are the two words we get from medeor? We get medication and meditation. The only difference is a C and a T. Both of those words stem from the word medeor, medication and meditation. We help to heal ourselves and others through our practice through meditation. You've heard me say this many times. A couple of you, or a few of you haven't been here when I've said this, but Soren Kierkegaard, the great 18th or 19th century, 1800s Lutheran theologian and pastor, said the function of prayer is not to change the mind of God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays. The function of prayer is not to change the mind of God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays. And we could say that very same thing for if we're doing chanting, if we're doing prostrations, if we're doing meditation. And by becoming more true to who we really are, to our ma'um, the Korean word for mind, body, and spirit, the essence of who we are, by becoming more true to that, we open up to everything that is. And not only by chanting can we heal ourselves, but we can offer this energy to others. I happened to be watching a movie the other day, High Dharma, with a close friend. This is a movie that actually Bup Meesonim made the copy for me a number of years ago, and I watched it a number of times. And there's a scene in there, and it's about a bunch of gangsters who are hiding out in the monastery. And there's a scene in there where the gangsters are in the Dharma hall cleaning the altar, and they're tipping the Buddha over. They want to see if it was made in China or India or where. And the statue falls down, and a wooden ear breaks off. And the monks are just absolutely incensed because these guys have been hiding out there for 3 or 4 weeks, and they've had it. And they go out and they, master, look at what these gangsters did. You got to kick them out of here. And the master says, do you mean to tell me after all these years you've been here, you think that Buddha's in that wooden statue? Have I taught you nothing? Buddha's in here, in each of us. We fail to realize that. Even though we use a statue as kind of a way of focusing, Buddha is in here, in each one of us. So there's a chant that I use a lot because most of you know that I love chanting, and I find it as productive, and for me, at many times more productive than silent meditation. And the medicine Buddha chant goes, Om, Baisajie, 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 Samugate, Svaha. Om, what are we doing? We're trying to come into resonance with the energy of the cosmos. We're trying to be on the same electromagnetic wavelength. Baisajie, Baisajie Guru, the teacher who offers healing, otherwise known as medicine Buddha, but the Sanskrit is Baisajie Guru, the teacher who offers healing. Baisajie, for healing. Baisajie, for healing. Baisajie, For healing, samugate. May it arise. May it happen. Svaha. Amen. Om. Paisage. 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 Samugate. Svaha. This is a chant we can offer for ourselves. Settle our minds. Focus on health. Focus on healing. Focus on rebalancing the subtle energies of our ma'um. I want to read you to close off here. Again, this is something that you guys are studying and have already studied this chapter 3. But these verses that I'm going to read you, as far as I'm concerned, they're probably the most famous verses that have ever been used in this book, A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Shantideva. Just listen to these verses if you would. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. May a rain of food and drink descend to clear away the pain of thirst and hunger. And during the eon of famine, may I myself change into food and drink. May I become an inexhaustible treasure for those who are poor and destitute. May I turn into all things they could possibly need, and may these be placed close beside them. Without any sense of loss, I'll jump to this one here. If in those who encounter me, a faithful or an angry thought arises, may that eternally become the source for fulfilling all their wishes. May all who say bad things to me or cause me any other harm, and those who may mock me and insult me, may they have the fortune to fully awaken. May I be a protector for those without one, a guide for all travelers on the way. May I be a bridge, a boat, a ship for all who wish to cross the water. May I be an island for those who seek one, and a lamp for those desiring light. May I be a bed for all who wish to rest, and a slave for all who want a slave. Remember, these days, slaves were very common over in the ancient East. May I be a wishing jewel, a magic vase, powerful mantras, and great medicine. May I become a wish fulfilling tree and a cow of plenty for the world. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach unto the ends of space. End of reading. Thank you. May blessings abound for each one of us.